Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the service in just a moment. I ask if you have a cell phone or any noise-making device, please turn it on silent. In just a moment, we're going to bring the family. I'm going to ask everyone if they could to please rise. You may be seated. On behalf of the family, I want to thank everybody who's joining us on the live stream as well as in person for the service of Mrs. Rochelle L Frank. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Yitzchak Falk. Thank you so much.
We are gathered here today to give final honor and respect to Rochelle Frank, Rochel Leah, bat Rav Nachum Yitzchak. And I'd like to extend my condolences to all of her family, to Judy and David Kirshner, Bachi and Avi Goldfeder, Aviva Frank, Lonnie Frank, Erica and Danny Gill, Danielle and Nick Linder, Elliot and Remy Kirshner, Jonathan Kirshner, Shifra and Barish Teichman, Fischel and Basi Goldfeder, Toby Goldfeder, Aryeh and Chevi Goldfeder, Avital Perry, Nahum Perry, Moria Perry, and the many, many great-grandchildren, as well as her beloved sister, Shani Polan. We're going to begin today with Tehillim Tetvav. Her oldest great-grandson, Yerucham Teichman. Please come forward. You have it? Okay.
Mizmar LeDavid, Adonai mi yogar ba'alecha, mi yishkan b'har kachecha, hailech tamim ufayal tzedek v'davar amis b'vavai, lai raga al l'shayner lai asa l'rei ehu ra v'charpa lai nasa al krevai, nivze be'enav nimas vel ves yirei Adonai yechabed, nishba l'hara v'la yamir, kaspai lai nasan b'neshech v'sheich adal naki lai lokach isa ele lai yimait lailam.
And her oldest grandson, Fischel Goldfeder, will recite Tehillim Chaf Gimel from the room for the Kohanim.
Mizmar LeDavid, Adonai roi lo yachzar, b'noisdeh sheyarbitzeni, ameh menuchai sinahaleini, nafshi yishovev yancheni, b'maglei tzedek leman shemoi, gam ki elech b'geit tzalmoves, le'ira ra ki ata yimodi, shiftecha mishantecha, heimo yinachamuni, Taroich lefonai shocha, neged terura, dishanta vashem roishi, kaisi rivaya, achtai v'chesed yedefuni koyimei chayai, v'shafti b'veis Adonai l'erech yomim.
I'm going to recite Eshet Chayil from Proverbs. Eshet Chayil miyimsa, v'rachot mitnim michra, batach bale bala, v'shalal lo yachzar. Gemaltu tov v'lo ra, kol yemei chayeha, darsha tzemer ufishtim v'taz bechavetz kapaya. Haita keniot socher mimerchak tavi lachma, v'takum ba'od laila v'titin teref leveta, v'chot neroteha. Zamamasa devatikachehu, mi pricha pen et akarim, chagra ba'oz matneha v'tamed zrotea. Tama kitov sachra, lo yechbe b'laila nera, yadeha shocha v'kishor v'chapa tamchu falech. Kappa parsa la'ani ve'adeha shulchan le'evion, lo tira leveta mishaleg, ki chol beita lavushanim, marvadim asatala, shesh v'argaman lavusha, noda b'sharim bala b'shifto im ziknei aretz, sadin asatav timkor v'chagor natnel knani, oz v'hadar levusha, v'tischak liyom acharon, piha patcha v'chochma, v'torat chesed olashona, tavia lichot beita v'lechem matzut lo tochel. Kamu ve'anea ve'ashura, bala ve'halala, rabot banut asu chayo, ve'atalit ol kulana. Sheker ha'chein, ve'hevel ha'yofi, isha yirat Adonai hi titalal, tinula mipri yadeha, ve'halua v'sharim ma'aseha. Grace is false and beauty is vain. A woman in awe of God, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her own hand, and let her deeds praise her in the gathering places. I'm going to call Rochelle's daughter, Judy Kirshner.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out and giving kavod to my mother. I know it's late tonight, and the family greatly appreciates it. How do I say goodbye to Mom? What to say about a quietish, unpretentious, and unassuming woman who, in contrast to my dad, was not very much in the public eye, but was involved in a quiet fashion. She was born in 1930. Don't tell her that I'm giving away her age. And grew up on the west side of Chicago in its heyday. Even I was born there, although my parents moved north from Independence Boulevard when I was an infant. She went to Marshall High School. I'm still wearing her ring today. As a matter of fact, Bobby Ashman even recognized it once. Mom continued her studies at Roosevelt University and then went on to Northwestern University to receive a master's degree in education. Over the years, so many people have told me that Mom was their first grade teacher at Torah Center. Full-time teaching kept her busy until I showed up. Mom got married Thanksgiving weekend in the Hebrew month of Kislev, which Dad always said was the month of kiss and love, and knew they were bashert, or meant to be, because he was named Yaakov, and she was named Rochelle Leah, although it did take 3 times of his asking her until she agreed, or so the story goes. My parents have 5 daughters, although we are now 4. Nechama died when she was nearly 2.5 years old, and this was a devastating blow to our family. I have very strong memories of all those details, as I had recently become a bat mitzvah and set shiva for my baby sister. And Ruthie told me I needed to be strong for my mother. When Bubby died, both Nechama and Zadie were disinterred to be able to travel together to Israel for burial. Mom moored privately on the side, as she didn't want any of us to be with her. I cannot possibly imagine the pain of burying your mother and reburying both your daughter and father. Mom was very private, and I think was unable to verbalize her sorrow. We actually hardly discussed Nechama until many years later. But time marches on, and Mom continued to raise us while teaching part-time in the Chicago public school system. She traveled to some pretty scary neighborhoods, but she was already familiar with them from her youth. I remember trips to the Frank side of the family, whom we were lucky enough to see because they were local, although the South Side seemed much further in those years than they do today. And we would visit Tantas Frida and Minna, Grossmutter, and the Jonases, and other relatives, Uncle Max, and especially Moody and Opa, and our zealot cousins. Our childhood vacations were always to visit the Poland cousins wherever they lived, Louisville, St. Louis, and even New York, and the grown-ups kept us occupied with our famous plays and musicals, which we then forced them to watch at the conclusion of our trips. and Shani always loved or made fun of our rendition of The Little Bird. Mom always kept us occupied with those crazy car games for the long drive after they packed up the station wagon and lined the back so we could sleep. Easier, but not necessarily, with all the screened entertainment available today. I learned many show tunes from Mom's Broadway musical records, and think of Mom whenever I see a Rodgers and Hammerstein movie. Once Dad retired from Shul, my parents were able to join us in New Jersey every Sukkot and Pesach, and were gracious enough to stay longer to babysit so David and I could take a trip. They developed a special relationship that only grandparents can have with their grandchildren while they stayed the entire time in our home. On their last trip, they stayed for an entire month to attend 2 weddings, Jennifer's and Ashley's, around Pesach time. It was a true joy for both David, myself, and the kids to be able to spend such a full length of time with them. Once Dad was gone and Mom was no longer traveling, we would talk about how much they were missed on these holidays. Our sukkah will feel empty without them, and our seders will be lacking its Yekish tone and special tunes from Saba, as well as Savta's crazy laughter from getting drunk on 4 cups of grape juice. Erica's Siberian Husky always gravitated to Mom, sensing her fear of him, and would plop himself down on her feet at Seder time. She was quite the good sport. My son-in-law, Danny, always tells us how Mom was the funniest person he ever knew, with her dry, sarcastic wit and sense of humor. My parents were so proud of all their grandchildren and loved traveling to Israel to spend time with their Israeli grandchildren. Avital even spent a special summer in Chicago with Mom. Mom was lucky enough to have most of Bachi's kids, really, because they were living locally. David and I are so grateful that they could attend all of our kids' bar and bat mitzvahs, as well as Erica's and Danny's wedding. Mom, or Savta, as she has more recently become known, wasn't able to attend either Danielle's or Elliot's wedding in person, but at least was able to meet both Nick and Remy. And my parents joined us several times in our summer home in Loon Lake, and Mom, who hated swimming, was brave enough to go into the water and even go fishing with David. Mom and Dad moved into Park Plaza in 2014 when they could no longer stay in their home. They actually didn't plan to ever move because Mom said it was too daunting a task, and boy, was it. But with all the stuff she saved, she was quite organized. For example, shoe boxes, labels unfilled with all those tchotchkes from Yussel and from Carrie, as well as all those toys we kids thought were ridiculous to keep, but suddenly loved when they were able to play with them when we came to town with our own children. By the time they moved to Park Plaza, Daddy was already beginning to be unwell, but Mom was devoted to caring for her husband, including when we had the privilege of joining in their 60th wedding anniversary. I truly believe Mom's caring full-time for Daddy helped slow the symptoms of her dementia. And 1.5 years ago, we had a simple celebration for Mom's 90th birthday at Park Plaza. In the last couple of years, her dementia progressed significantly, especially that first summer, necessitating full-time care. As difficult as it was with my inability to visit frequently due to COVID, I'm grateful to have been able to Zoom, once I figured out how, with my sisters and Mom weekly so she could actually see us. It was wonderful to have the grandchildren join in, and a special treat to have the great-grandchildren join in when they were able. Mom had a special relationship with all of her grandchildren, and it was always calming to her when she would see the young families on Zoom. I would video chat with her daily with the kind help of her caregivers, and I truly believe that helped her memory and reinforced her visual recognition. She rarely didn't know who I was. I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of Mom's loving caregivers from Shell and Anna in the early years, to Wanda, Ola, Juliana, and especially Angie, who truly loved and respected my mom. I wish you all could have known her when she was well. She would have been such a delightful friend and companion. And even Roland, who was Dad's caregiver, has kept in touch and visited Mom when he was here. She always recognized you, Roland. Mom's relationship with her friends and family always inspired me. She kept in touch with her childhood friends who moved to New York, especially Tova, Masuka, and Lorraine, and I really enjoyed finding letters written to each other in their youth. It's remarkable to me that they maintained such closeness long distance, in contrast with free calls and unlimited communication options today. Whenever my parents came to town, Mom always had her girlfriends visit, and it was a hoot spending time with them. She's inspired me to maintain relationship with my childhood friends. She also made a point of calling her close friends and family every Erev Shabbat. She had a special relationship with her cousins, and most recently keeping in touch with Nettie and Margie. She spoke to Aunt Shani weekly, and the sisters had a remarkable bond. This has inspired me to make my pre-Shabbat calls. I hope that I've instilled these same loving habits in my children as Mom has instilled in me. Growing up, she was involved in many organizations, including Sisterhood, Chevra Kadisha, and especially her Nili Mizrahi group. I remember helping her prepare when she was having the meetings in our house and schlepping out all of those special dessert plates with matching teacups. Now my kids know where I got that from when I take out my matching plates and cups. And who can forget the famous legendary lox box on Mother's Day? It's up to my generation to tell the kids about it. My children no longer have grandparents, and we are bereft at not having our parents to ask for advice and guidance. Mom has been physically with us, but cognitively we have been mourning our loss for a long time. It breaks my heart that my girls are unable to join us in person, but Mom had the joy of gaining 4 great-granddaughters and 1 new daughter-in-law this summer alone. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the out-of-town daughters, Lonnie and myself, to express our profound gratitude to both Bachi and Aviva for their devotion to Mom and her care. Bachi, your assistance was invaluable, and Aviva, you are a true tzaddikas, with being in charge of every detail from ordering her meds to organizing her caregiving and everything in between. It's been more than a full-time job. David and Avi, you have been loving and supportive husbands and sons-in-law. Tom, you have made yourself readily available to help my parents in support of Viva. Mommy, thank you for all your love, advice, availability, and care throughout the years. I hope that you are mochel me for any wrongdoing or any pain I may have caused. You are now with your loving husband and daughter, and I hope I continue to make you proud.
We call upon her son-in-law from the Kohen room, Avi Goldfeder.
Aunt Shani, Judy, my dear wife Bachi, Aviva, and Lonnie. As difficult as it was to be maspid, my shverel of a shalom, sitting down to write a hesped for Mom, my mother-in-law, I found even more difficult. I feel that way mainly due to who and what my mother-in-law stood for. Savta was in fact a very rare and special woman. I always find it a bit of, quote, a cop-out when any time I would attend a levaya of a woman to hear the rabbi officiating would always refer to Eshes Chayil as the basis of his hesped. Yet, when you take the time to study the 22 famous psukim of Mishlei, it describes my mother-in-law to a T. My mother-in-law was kulo chesed, one of the kindest and most gentle souls that I have ever met. She lived for her family, her daughters, her grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And of course, she lived mostly for her beloved husband, Yaakov, whom she took care of and stood by through thick and thin. Kulo chesed. Only a few hours ago, as I walked into the Adas for Mincha, a particular balabas came up to me and said, Avi, before Mincha, I want to tell you a story about your shvigar that I'm almost positive no one knows. Knowing this particular balabas and knowing that my mother-in-law probably didn't travel in the same circles, I couldn't imagine what he was going to tell me. He proceeded to inform me that 37 years ago, when his younger sister was going to be married, his grandmother, his mother's mother, was living in their home, and due to her serious condition, his own mother found it impossible to attend the wedding of his sister, her daughter, because the grandmother had to be attended to 24/7. 37 years ago was before home health care agencies. This particular family didn't know what to do. 3 days before the chasana, the phone rang in their home. It was Mrs. Frank. She introduced herself as Rochelle Frank. They knew each other, but again, there was not a major tie. My mother-in-law offered, after hearing or knowing about the story, to come to their home on the day of the chasana and take care of the infirm grandmother mother throughout the whole day and evening and night, thus allowing the mishpacha to celebrate the chasana of the daughter without any difficulty. Kulo chesed. Her father, Zatzal, was a learned man, a learned Rav. He received smicha and telz lita. And together with Babi Baba, my shvigar's mother, Allah Shalom, Safta, and on Me'ah Esrim Shana and Shani, were raised in old Chicago in a home that was Kulo Torah and Kulo Yiddishkeit. I comment to Bachi that in the over 42 years having known my mother-in-law, I never ever heard her speak Lashon Hara, an amazing midah. Sure, she loved to know what was going on in town, but she never spoke about other people in a negative or bad way, ever. Yom Tovim and Shabbosim were her favorite and special times. And when it came to family celebrations like anniversaries or especially birthdays of her grandchildren, she was as happy as can be. How we all looked forward to her special safta cake that she would prepare in honor of our birthdays. And I do not recall a birthday or a Father's Day that I did not receive a gift from her, always wrapped and with the ever-present of apology, and I quote, "I don't know if you can use this, but," unquote. Thoughtful and supportive to the end, the devotion and care that she had for my shver alav shalom was indeed inspirational. Even when my shver took or held of an opinion that was met with opposition, Ma never disagreed with him and always was first and foremost to support and defend him. We are left with a true void, a great void. Vatama Sarah Bekiria Arbahi Chavron, Be'eretz Canaan Vayavo Abraham Lispo L'Sarah Levivkosa. The Torah notes that when Sarah passed away, Abraham eulogized his wife and he cried for her. Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer was a Talmud Muvak of Yisrael Salanter. And when Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer died, the family found his Savah, and in the Savah were the instructions that he not be eulogized. He didn't want any Hespedim at his Levaya. The Rabbanim of Yerushalayim gathered, and they thought that his wishes should be disregarded. And they based that opinion and that decision on the view of the Noda Yehuda, who had ruled that following the death of Rabbi Yehoshua Falk, the Pnei Yehoshua, he had also left similar instructions that there shouldn't be any Hespedim by his Levaya. The Noda Yehuda felt that as one of the renowned leaders of the generation, Rabbi Falk should be utilized properly, even though he had requested otherwise. Rav Shmuel Salant initially felt that no eulogy should be given for Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer, but he changed his mind when he realized that there were actually two factors to be thought of as far as Hespedim. On one hand, a hesped provokes an opportunity to praise the departed. Yet there is another aspect to a eulogy which precedes the burial to evoke crying and lamenting in the living, as they are helped to appreciate the magnitude of their personal loss. Therefore, Harav Shmuel Salant finally agreed that a eulogy be given from Yitzchak Blazer, provided the Hespedim could be placed on noting the great void created by his death. It was unthinkable that a man whose entire life was dedicated to stirring people to do tshuva, even the point of tears, would not allow the opportunity to move the masses. And indeed, this is what occurred. The precedent that was also set by Avraham Avinu in eulogizing his wife Sarah. He praised her many virtues and great deeds, but he also aimed to explain the great loss which the community, his mishpacha, and the ganze Welt had suffered due to her departure. Indeed, our family has suffered a great loss. So let us all learn from my mother-in-law's virtues and life lessons that she taught us and that she stood for. Chesed, kindness, tznius, her love of Yiddishkeit, and her love for Eretz Yisrael. In the Sefer Eitz HaChaim, there's another reason that it gives that Avraham Avinu did not excessively cry over Sarah. Because Avraham knew that Sarah at that point had fulfilled her entire tafkid. She reached complete shleimus in her midos and in all areas of being Makadosh Shem Shemayim. And therefore, when she passed from this world, she was only changing locations to a better place. Over Shiva, everyone's going to become to be Menachem Avol. And when you go be Menachem Avol, you say, Hamokom Yenachem Eschem. The Alter Rebbe Zatzal explains that Hamakom, the place that a person creates for themselves in the real world, in the Olam HaEmes, that itself is a Nechama. The place that is created through one's mitzvahs and Maisim Tovim is a Nechama for the person having fulfilled their mission. We need to realize that through our thoughts and actions, and every bit of Torah and Tefillah, day after day, we are creating our own makom in the real world, the Olam HaEmes. Ma, you're on your way back to the Olam HaEmes to be with Nechama, your parents, and especially your dear Yaakov. On behalf of the entire mishpacha, we ask for mechila from you. If we ever hurt you or didn't treat you with the proper respect, may you be a Melitzi Yeshara to our entire mishpacha. Before I conclude, I would just also like to reiterate the words of my sister-in-law Judy to Aviva. The derech eretz that you showed Dad, especially in the last few weeks of his life, was remarkable. But it doesn't even come close to what you did for your mother, my mother-in-law, our Savta. You raised the level of Kibbud Av V'Em to a new height. Lihamavas Lanetzach Umacha Hashem Dima Me'al Kol Panim.
Calling Elliot and Jonathan Kirshner on behalf of the grandchildren.
I speak for myself and my siblings when I say how lucky we are to have been so close to Savta. Even though we lived all the way in New Jersey, and Savta was terrified of getting on airplanes, she made a point to come visit us for both Pesach and Sukkot every year. We would burst with excitement every time Saba and Savta came in, and we couldn't wait for our yearly trips to Chicago, where we would have endless Entenmann cookies while one of Savta's taped soap operas would be on in the background. We also learned on our visits some Savta-isms like watermelon, chali, and chunt, which is cholent for those of you who don't know. Despite the distance, we were all really close with her. She always made herself available to talk and was always up to date on every detail of our lives, and she was a presence that will now sorely be missed. One thing that we only started appreciating later in her life was her wit and quick sense of humor. She had a way of always making Erica and Danny laugh with her one-liners and will continue to be remembered by them as the funniest family member. One of our favorite things to witness with Savta was always towards the end of the Seder on Pesach. She would have her very tiny glass of wine next to her bigger cup of grape juice, and by the fourth cup, the smallest comment or joke would send her bursting into laughter, which was truly contagious. By the end of the night, everyone erupted into laughter and joy, all started by Savta. And of course, there was Duke, Erica's dog, who always found his place by Savta's feet, the one person who was slightly afraid of dogs. Everyone else wished that Duke would come and cuddle up by them, but he would always end up by Savta, who would get so nervous at first and then relax, and we would like to think that she kind of enjoyed the company. Every year on Pesach, there would always be a buzz around the house with all the cooking and preparations. Savta and Elliot would work side by side for hours, making sure all of our favorite foods were prepared in time. He specifically remembers learning how to make Savta's famous gumdrop cookies and strawberry ice cream, and it will be a tradition he plans to keep up every year before Pesach. When we were younger, Savta would teach us all these games to play on Chag or Shabbat. She would literally get down on the floor with us and start tossing nuts back and forth. I don't remember the exact rules, but we have vivid memories of playing with her any chance we could, and her always coming up with fun games and telling us fun stories. For Danielle, the best was when Savta and Saba would visit on Pesach, which was right around her birthday. Each year, she got to help Savta make her famous birthday cake and icing to be eaten either before or after Pesach. And to this day, it's still her favorite cake, and she hopes that she'll make it with her daughter. It was especially meaningful to Danielle that she was able to get to know Nick before she started experiencing her cognitive disabilities. Danielle and Nick stopped in Chicago on the way back from a road trip and stayed with Savta, who hosted them. It was there that she got to not just talk to Nick over the phone, but actually got to spend time with him. Those memories with Savta will be cherished forever. I will always treasure the special time that Safta and I had shared together when I stayed with her and Saba before I would go off to camp every year. Safta would take me to the Lincolnwood Library to rent a movie that we would watch together. It was an imperative part of my send-off, and I always look forward to visiting them. I'll also never forget going to see Tarzan and Lion King on Broadway with Saba and Safta as a kid. Every Friday when we were little, we would call Safta and Saba to wish them a good Shabbos. As we got older, this became an integral part of our week to make sure we called Safta every Friday. This became harder to do over the past few years as her cognition deteriorated. With COVID and the rise of Zoom, we were lucky enough to be able to say hello, even if it was only for a short period of time. And even if she didn't remember, it was important that she got to meet both Annika and Sydney over Zoom, two of her most recent grandchildren. She was so much more than a grandparent. She was an educator, a wife, a mother, a Rebbitzin, a proud Chicagoan, but to us, she was Safta. We miss her, we love her, and we will always remember her.
Here's another passage of Safta's life through Toby, her granddaughter's eyes, that we can all relate to. Safta, where does one begin? Despite her declining health these past few years, truly ever since our grandfather passed away, I still can't believe we're here today to say goodbye to the matriarch of our family. It's hard to pinpoint her most distinctive quality, as she was so sweet and kind, the true dictionary definition of a grandmother, and yet she had the most wicked sense of humor. So often eulogies seem to make the person into an angel who never did wrong and had no enemies, but when it comes to Safta, this is the plain honest truth. Everyone who knew her loved her and just thought she was the nicest lady. As a child, having such a nice Safta had its perks. Being a first grade teacher and working in education for decades, Safta always knew how to keep us laughing and entertained. She always had a game for us to play and a treat hidden away for us, even if it was just a box of Entenmann donuts or her green birthday cakes. But as an adult, getting to silently observe Safta, especially around Park Plaza, where she lived the past few years, one could better understand what it was that made everyone love Safta so much. She was the true embodiment of what it meant to be an Eishes Chayil. She was a helper to all. But what made it special was her poise and countenance in all that she did. So commonly, when people do something for others or a simple task, there's a need to publicize it. But with Safta, she so quietly and humbly would pinpoint what one needed and just stepped up and did it. No fanfare, no fuss, and at times without anyone even noticing. Whether it be as a partner and enabler for her husband of over 50 years, whether it be in providing any and all support, physical or emotional, for her sister Shani, her 5 daughters, 11 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren, whether it be a listening ear for a shul member, a kind word for a friend, a funny joke for the one having a hard day, Safta was just the most dependable, most solid person I know. As an adult, I finally realized her superhuman ability to understand each person and relate to them accordingly. Watching her walk with ease through KJBS, where she was the Rebbitzin for over 3 decades, or watching her walk, maybe with less ease, through Park Plaza, she was a true queen. Everyone from the janitors to the most popular fancy ladies would all stop and greet her, and in response, Safta always had not only a greeting, but a joke, a compliment, or a question indicative of how she remembered exactly what each person was going through at the time. In short, Safta left every interaction with the other party smiling. How we each strive to be able to achieve such a thing for even one day, and Safta did this for life. There may not be a myriad of incidences or board presidium positions to enumerate the special woman she was, but that in itself is what made her so special. She was a behind-the-scenes kind of lady, a silent supporter and caregiver, a woman whose moral compass was unshakable and clearer than anyone I know. A woman whose greatest ability was enabling those around her to be the best version of themselves and achieve all they were capable of. A true mechaneches. Despite her name being Rochelle Leah, which my Saba would joke is the reason he needed to marry her because his name was Yaakov, is ever so telling that we went into this Shabbos, Parshat Chayei on Morning Safta. This week's Parsha, the only one named for a woman, a wife, a mother, pays homage to our matriarch Sarah. It extols the value of one living each day to their fullest potential, the value of caring and supporting others so subtly, and the value of loss of a matriarch's life to those near and dear to her. Savta should just continue to see her family thrive and bring her nachas in the ways Sarah did. On a personal level, there will be so much more I take with me in memory or in striving to internalize Savta's subtle lessons. Like how she taught us to play piano instead of yelling at us for banging on it. Like how she subtly would save me from my grandfather's myriad of technology inquiries. Like her VHS tape recordings of movies she thought we might enjoy, proof of her love and how we were always on her mind. Like the annual birthday trips to Baskin-Robbins or summer trips to novelty golf. Like her constant ability to provide sound and sage advice when we would talk. Like the pride we felt exuding from her when she would introduce us, her grandchildren, to people. And most notably, the pride we got in telling people she was our Savta. She will forever have an impact on us and will forever know our best qualities, in part owed to her. May her neshama have an aliyah, and may she be a ma'alis yosher for the entire family.
In the parsha we read this past Shabbat, Abraham sends his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. And Eliezer devises a sign to know who is the right woman for Yitzchak. And that is, he says, he's at the well, the woman that I asked for a drink, when she says, yes, I'll give you to drink and I'll water your camels, which is quite a big undertaking. That's the one. And of course, Rivka appears and she fulfills the sign. But it is not a sign that is just a meaningless sign. It's a test of the chesed, of the kindness of Rivka. And we see when Eliezer brings Rivka back to Yitzchak, that Yitzchak brings her, the Torah says, ha'ohala Sarah imo, which often is translated incorrectly into the tent of Sarah, his mother, but really, grammatically, it's into the tent, comma, Sarah, his mother. And Rashi famously comments here that she became the dugma, the image of Sarah, his mother, that the Shabbos candle stayed lit from Shabbos to Shabbos, the blessing could be found in the dough, and a cloud, the Shekhinah, was on the tent. What Rashi leaves out from the Midrash that he quotes is a fourth aspect that the Midrash highlights of the blessing that Sarah brought to the tent, and then when Rivka came, they returned. And that is, the Midrash says, Kol yamim shaita Sarah kayemet hayu delatot ptuchot l'revacha. That all the time that Sarah was alive, the doors were open to plenty. Sarah was a partner in Abraham in the Haknasas Orchim and the tzedakah that he was doing. And when Rivka came, this same blessing returned. Rochelle was a woman of great kindness. She was very unassuming. I had the privilege in 2014 when she and her husband, Rabbi Jack Frank, moved into Park Plaza, and I was still working at that time at Park Plaza to get to know them well. She was someone who was very understated and very kind and had a strong sense of who she was and what she wanted, and her caring for Rabbi Frank was incredibly evident. I learned this past few days from her daughters, this isn't the first time that she exhibited such care, that of course this was true throughout her life, for all her family, and also for her own mother who she cared for in her home. She's someone who always saw the best in people and gave people the benefit of the doubt. She was someone who was very modest and never looking for limelight, and she was truly Rabbi Frank's partner for 35 years at KJBS. She was a true Rebbitzin, a simple, kind person, yet devoted to the needs of others. She was someone who was always very put together, matching hat and dress, always important to look nice. She was someone who had a great sense of what was the proper thing to do and instilled this in her children. As all of her family has mentioned, her passing leaves a great void for their family, but also for the Chicago Jewish community and for Klal Yisrael. Tehei nafsha tzura b'tzorach chayim, may her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. I call upon Rabbi Eitan Allen, who is the current rabbi at Park Plaza, to do the Kilmoli Rachamim for her now.
El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamiramim Hamtzei Menucha Nechana Al Kanfei Ashchina B'mahalos Kedoshim Utarim Kizor Harakia Mazhirim Es Nishmas Rachel Leah Bas Harav Nachum Yitzchak Shalcha Le'olama Be'avor Shanachnu Mispalim Be'ad Haskaras Nishmasa Be'ganei Den Tehei Menuchasa Lachen Ba'ala Rachamim Yasdira B'Seiser K'nafav Le'olamim Yitzror B'Tzor Achayim Es Nishmasa Adonai hu nachalasa v'sanuach b'shalom ha'mishkava v'nomar amen.
This concludes our service here in the chapel. Kfur will take place at Eretz Chaim in Beit Shemesh Monday morning. That information, hopefully, for those who would like to watch, will be available. If it is available, it will be on our website, chicagojewishfunerals.com. Shiva information is available on our website. Just one note, Aviva hopefully will be traveling, COVID permitted, to Eretz Yisrael. She'll be returning Wednesday, and she'll be sitting at some point Wednesday through Motzei Shabbos. Memorial contribution in memory of Mrs. Frank to Chicago Mitzvah Campaign, as well as Mizrahi, Religious Zionist of Chicago. That information, as well as all the contact information for Shiva, is on our folder. If you did not get one on the way in, please make sure you get one on the way out. And for those of you who are watching online, that information is available at chicagojewishfunerals.com. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise as we escort the casket of Mrs. Frank from the chapel, as well as the family, as they begin their week of Shiva just across the lobby in our North Chapel. Thank you.